Hello and welcome back to D-Vlog. And today we have nothing short of a legend with us today. Harley Flanagan is here to talk about his new movie, Wired for Chaos. It's in UK cinemas from 14th of November with preview Q&A screenings in London, Birmingham and Brighton. Harley Flanagan, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you very much for that wonderful intro, and thank you for having me on the show.
Well, I watched the film last night. I was lucky enough to get an advance look at it. It's an incredible film. Unlike any other documentary about a musician I've ever seen, it's very candid. It's brutally honest. There's nothing smoothed over or glamorized. There's no rock and roll business going on here. How did you?
I was, unfortunately.
How did you come to do this? How did this come about?
You know what? It all happened, I guess, because of the book that I wrote, Hardcore Life of My Own, and my wife, who I was then not married to, she was my editor, and she kind of got it into her head that it should be a film, and obviously we started working on that book a long time ago. I guess I had got her involved with it around 2012, 11, 12, something like that. And the film, it was really her idea. I had no involvement in making it. I actually didn't even see the thing until it was done. That's how little I had to do with it. But I saw some work that the director had done, and I was really impressed with his work. And that's what made me say, okay, you know what, I'm going to have to trust this guy to use his vision to tell this story. And honestly, I think he did a pretty good job. You know, if you've read my book, it really is it holds true to the same story. It just tells other stories and different details, but I think he did a really good job.
Excellent. Yeah, it really did. It's a striking film. Now, I don't want to give too much away about what happens in the film because I want people to go and see it, but there are certain things. I've been a fan of your work for a very long time, and I'd seen photos of a young Harley Flanagan, very young Harley Flanagan, playing drums, and I didn't know the full backstory on that until I saw the movie. Now, your first band, the Stimulators, you were 11 years old, I believe, playing drums in that band?
Yeah, I actually had been in another band that had toured already before I joined them. Yeah, but that was my first real claim to fame, I guess. And I think we recorded our first single when I was like 12. And it was people they always ask me how cool it must have been, or they wonder how or why or this or that, and they just don't really understand that there's also a bit of a downside to being the only kid in the room at an adult party, and so obviously I don't pull any punches on any of this stuff in this film because it's really part of what made me and what made my music and everything else. So I knew going in it was going to be it was going to hit some brutal facts. Yeah. But this is what I signed on for, man. I ain't never been afraid of the truth, even if it's not pretty, and even if it sometimes look bad. Sometimes you have to own things in order to move forward from them.
One thing I was quite interested in, which wasn't covered in the movie, was if you were an 11-year-old playing drums that well and a multi-instrumentalist, how early did you get started with music, like from when you picked up your first instruments? Because you were a prodigious talent.
I would like to have thought that, or I would like to think that I was somewhat advanced, but you see these kids on YouTube nowadays who are like 6 and 7 years old who are like playing like ridiculous bass and ridiculous drums and guitar and classical music and everything. So I don't necessarily think I was that exceptional. I think all kids are exceptional. Sometimes sometimes they just don't get the opportunity to explore what they're exceptional at, and I guess that's more the fault of the parent than the child. And I think that although I am obviously musically, skilled just instinctively because I didn't study anything, and I'm very Rain Man-esque when it comes to music. I can hear things and hear the similarity in like 10 different pieces of music. My wife is always making fun of me in that way. But I think it had a lot to do with the surroundings I was put in, that the reason that I excelled, and, and that had its pluses and minuses.
There's a very interesting part in the film where there's a part when you mentioned that you didn't have access to equipment, and so you would ring up your friend's answering machine and like sing riffs down the answering machine.
I would hum a lot of my songs into his machine. I would say, "Don't pick up the phone," and I would hum the song because it was my only way to log the riffs. Yes. So it was pretty funny. I lived in a squat. The short version of the story. I lived in a squat. Didn't have electricity, so I couldn't record anything on cassette, which is how we would have done it back then. So I would literally run to the corner with a quarter and call him up from the payphone, and that's how we would make progress.
I always find it very inspiring when I speak to musicians that can make something from nothing. And the idea
that's what punk rock is. Bro, not to cut you off, but like I actually remember booking European tours and shit on the corner payphones, like on one payphone and on the other payphone with two different booking agents and promoters. And people come up, want to use the phone, and you're on all of them at the same time, with like a credit card number that you bought off someone on the street. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. I find the story so inspiring because obviously, hardcore owes a debt to you. And funnily enough, I was talking to a friend of yours recently for the second time, a Mr. Eugene Robinson. And I was interviewing Eugene about the re-release of the Whipping Boy record, and your name came up, and he mentioned you. And now I'm going to run this quote by you, see if you can remember saying this. But it was one of the best quotes I think I've heard this year. Right?
Oh boy!
So he said apparently you said that hardcore was a shit that you did in the early '80s that wouldn't flush.
Yeah, I pretty much did say something along those lines. I think I said I was even. It was a little more cold than that. I think I may have said New York hardcore was a shit I took in the '80s that wouldn't flush. But somewhere, I was kind of being a dick. Actually, that's just part of New York humor is that we're dicks. We shit on everybody. It's a bad habit. But that's how you can tell somebody who's really an old school New Yorker as opposed to like a new school New Yorker. The old heads, we shit on everything and everybody.
I love it.
That's why we hate people from Boston because they do the same shit. So I guess we hate them because they're similar, except that they're townies and we come from an actual city. But anyway, enough of that.
But one thing to segue out of that, one thing that you and Eugene share is a love of martial arts.
Yes, absolutely. We're both jiu-jitsu heads, and I should also mention I've known Eugene since I was probably like 12 years old. I mean, we go way back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you did the forward in his book, didn't you?
Yeah, man. He's a really solid guy, man. Known him for
yeah. Just like yourself, exactly what you see on record is the man. You know,
Yeah, man. There's
there's no
no punch
disconnect.
being pulled. You know, he doesn't care if he's making a friend or not. He's going to be honest, and then the friend or not comes out of that honest relationship. You know,
Yeah, man.
which is,
Yeah.
I appreciate. He's a badass, and he's you know he's also a black belt, and he's a big fellow. So you know, I would hate to really have to go all out with him. I'd have to probably do something really filthy, like use a weapon or something, you know, because no, he's tough as nails, and he's a big boy. So big man, I should say, and he will
Yes.
definitely put the pressure on. So, but
So I found that interesting, the parallels, because obviously you both come from a hardcore background. Eugene went in a different route with hardcore, and you invented what we now. Well, I don't know how it sits with you, but a lot of modern metalcore bands do cite Cro-Mags as being year zero for that style.
I take that as a compliment. I didn't. These are all such new terms to me. You know, I always thought of that whole umbrella as being more of a crossover thing. I guess it's now metalcore or whatever. Quite honestly, you know, when you're in it, it's difficult to see it from an objective standpoint from the outside of like, oh, this is such and such, and this is that, and da 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 da. You know, I was just kind of doing what felt natural at the time, and Age of Quarrel was, you know, a progression of the hardcore and punk, influenced by some of the metal that I was starting to listen to, I should say. That's what inspired those songs and that style. And Best Wishes, quite honestly, was me taking that and saying, okay, like, how would a hardcore kid write a metal album? You know, I just took everything that I had poured into that first album and tried to write what I thought was more of a metal album, you know, which was at that point influenced by things like obviously Judas Priest and, you know, whatever else, so many different things, you know, but, and each record I try to, you know, just take outside influences, not really from hardcore. You know, I think it's, you know, that's what makes it interesting is, you know, if you start stealing inspiration from your own genre, it's going to come out sounding like everything else within your genre. You know, so
Absolutely.
So take it or leave it. You know, some people like some records more than others. Some records are not as good. Some are better. Whatever. You got to be. You know, you got to take chances, right?
Absolutely. And there's an old cliche that, like, you know, happy musicians don't make good music. Do you think you would have been able to have created this hardcore sound if your situation wasn't so chaotic and that came through in the music?
You know, that's, I don't know, man, because my life is pretty fucking good now, I got to say.
Yeah.
And I'm making some of my best music, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think, you know, but I can't eradicate one from the other because I still had those experiences. So I may not be living that same exact struggle at this point in my life. Nonetheless, I still struggle with those exact same experiences. You know, they still echo in my brain, and I
Of
still, you know,
course.
process them in my own way as I try to move forward in life. Because, quite honestly, when you have PTSD, it's like sometimes the being in a peaceful environment is almost more torture than being in the chaos, because in the chaos you feel a certain sense of this is my comfort zone. I'm in a state of fight or flight. When there's no fight or flight, you find your mind racing to a place to create it. So sometimes, you know, calm can be more difficult than a war when you're, you know, when you're raised in battle.
No, I totally associate with that. Absolutely. And one thing that comes across is how intuitive the music was. It was just like it seemed like it just sort of flowed out. Like your early demo before Chromax, which you did all the parts. You know, it just seemed intuitive. Is that how you still write? Is just
It's
with
exactly
intuition?
you know, a lot of the stuff is actually written in the studio. Like typically I'll go in with half the songs kind of formulated and the other half will just kind of happen. And then I'll just move a couple parts around, but that'll be the basis of the song. In fact, I find more often than not, those are the songs that come out the best because they're just burning. They're coming out right then and there. And then, the good thing to do is to freestyle some vocals or whatever, and then come back to them and revisit them later with actual lyrics, or try to put lyrics to them and take it from there. My process is still evolving.
Well, any good musician is always just evolving, aren't they?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe that's why I haven't had any real success, because I haven't stuck to a formula long enough for people to sink their teeth into it. I don't know, but to be do you want to be a successful artist, or do you want to be a satisfied artist? I guess,
Yeah. And then you get onto the question of what is success, because is success just being happy?
Success for me is, I appreciate the woman that I am married to every day, all the time, and my kids are young adult men now and doing well, and have survived through already things that would have broken a lot of people. So I feel super successful because, I married someone that really, complements everything in my life so perfectly. And my kids are growing up to be strong, well-rounded young men who are, figuring things out. And that makes me proud of that. And fuck, man, if that ain't success, I don't know what is, man.
Yep. Speaking as a father of an 18-year-old, I totally hear you there. Totally hear you. Like, how do you feel now, looking back at the film? Like, is it difficult to watch, or is it?
The first dozen times.
Yeah, right.
But it gets easier, just like therapy.
Yeah.
Which, incidentally, I started seeing a therapist when I started working on the film, because I knew I was going to hit some walls in this fucker. So I tried to get in front of it before it went south, which I think is actually a good thing. And I think most people either don't have the luxury of the accessibility to that, or a lot of men don't think they need to, or don't want to, or think they got it figured out, or just think that they're too tough to fucking need to talk to anybody. And quite honestly, if you've ever been through any real shit in life, sometimes it's not a bad thing to talk to someone that may not necessarily understand what you've been through, but might be able to give you some coping skills. Might actually give you a couple of tools that might be helpful for you in handling your own trauma or your own stress. So along that process, it was definitely good for me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I can just say that, like, for instance, yesterday, I spoke to my therapist. I love saying that. It makes me sound like such a badass, right? I spoke to my therapist, and then I went to jiu-jitsu and fucking got my ass kicked for a good hour by a bigger, stronger, better black belt. Like, did I leave out younger? And, that was my fucking therapy for the day. First, I sat and talked to somebody that has a really more educated perspective on how, just how the brain works. It's fascinating. It has so much to do with, in my case, chemical shit, more than what you might want to call emotional shit. I'm always looking for a balance. And in my case, I get it from, dopamine peaks, which I get from either, raging out on shit, or from training, or from, from all of the things that drive us, whether it's sex or in my case, fighting, performing, playing,
Yeah.
So I'm always seeking that dopamine, same shit that people seek when they take a hit off of a cigarette. They're looking to get that, But now that I understand a lot more about this, I realize that the roller coaster I'm on is partially chemical. It's not just that I'm like a psychotic.
No, it's serotonin, isn't it? It's
Once you understand like that, it makes it a little easier to cope with the fact that you're losing your mind half the time. It's like, oh, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally associate with that. So, as you can see, I'm surrounded by bottles of hot sauce. I come from a
Yeah.
catering background, right? I was a chef by trade. Now, one of your friends, and I can't do this interview without mentioning one of your friends, was the reason why I got into chefing, and that is Mr. Anthony Bourdain, who turns up in your film. God rest him. He was an absolute inspiration to me, that man. I've read all of his books several times. Yeah, did you meet through punk rock initially?
You know, ironically, we met through jiu-jitsu, but as it would turn out, we had rubbed elbows or been in definitely the same rooms throughout my childhood. I just wasn't aware of it because to me, he was just another adult in the room, whereas I was a kid, and unless you were in one of the bands that I was friends with or somebody that was friends with my mother or my aunts or somebody like that, you were just another person that I could hit up for a quarter to play games of pinball, which was my whole thing. I'd be like running around Max's all night, or CB's like, got a quarter, you got a quarter, you got a quarter. I'd just be like glued to the fucking pinball machine in the back. So that would have been the extent of my relationship with him. I was probably more like his daughter was when I met her, and that's how that story begins well, actually, I met him at like a MMA event before. It was like the first sanctioned MMA event in New York. But then I was his daughter's jiu-jitsu instructor. And
Right.
then over a period of time of getting to know him, that's when he dropped I don't know you from the Cro-Mags. I remember you from the Stimulus. And I was like, what? And I was like, and then he started going down this thing of all the different people that we knew in common and all the places we had been in. I guess he wanted to suss me out before he dropped that bomb. Like he wanted to see what I was like as an adult now. And here I am teaching his daughter jiu-jitsu. I guess he wanted to see what Harley Flanagan, the adult, had turned into before he said, I've known you since you were a kid. Yeah. But he was really, really an awesome guy. A really awesome
one of the
guy.
real ones.
Yeah, honestly, there's only a couple of people that I've known in my life that I like really would look forward to our next conversation. Like, what are we going to talk about? What can I try to bring up? Because I want to get their thoughts on it type of shit. And he was definitely one of those cats. And sadly, the two first people that come to mind in those categories are both no longer with us. So I just have to out loud to them, think in my head to them, and just listen and imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, another name that comes up in the film, Adam Yao, Beast Boys. And another iconic person. Now, when you knew all like people like him as a youngster, did you think that he had like fame and fortune in the stars for him, or was he just another goofy kid?
He was just another goofy kid. I thought he was set just because his family had money, and they didn't even have money. They had money to me because I didn't have shit. So I was like, he's got a nice house. So, but, they got it, whatever, lower class, But no, he was a fucking great guy. Like literally, when you say his name, the first thing that I think of is how much my stomach and face would hurt from laughing when I was a kid, because he was just that kid. Like he would fucking make you laugh until you were literally ready to piss yourself. Like in pain, laughing type shit. He was that good. He was that fucking funny. And this was way before the Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
And, I actually was with them. It was him and John Berry and the girls from Luscious Jackson, the ladies. When they came up with the name Beastie Boys, I was there. I remember it. And every time I walked past that block, I point to the window and I was like, that apartment, that's where the name is. And I have like a moment and I'm like, so, it's cool to go that far back with, cats that really were that contributed that much to culture, And it's funny because when you're that close, you almost don't see it as with the same marvel that others do. Because, I remember, him teaching me how to play fucking Dungeons and Dragons and giving me my first hit of acid when I was like 12. So, I don't, and I was like, I never really thought they were that great rappers. I thought they had some great songs, but I grew up with them when they were a punk band. So like, I was just kind of like, but like, I got all these other feelings that, that go along with it,
Amazing.
Sleeping at the house and shit. This is one of my best memories is him jumping up and down on his bed, rapping along to the Sugar Hill Gang, like way before Beastie Boys was a thought. And I'm like, if you would have told me that, I'm laughing again. It was one of those belly hurting shit. And I'm like, if you would have told me that this dude's going to be like the dude that puts hip hop like on the map, like to like mainstream, I was like, get the fuck out of here. I would literally say, get the fuck out of here.
That's incredible, man. Well, so the film, it absolutely, it comes out 14th of November in this country. I really recommend everyone go see it.
Yeah, you know what, man? If you want to hear a little, shit, these stories are nothing. If you want to hear about like real underground shit, like going back, look, my mom is the reason that that Andy Warhol met the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed. So like I've been been in it since before I knew what it was. And, that's how my life started. Like, so it's definitely an interesting story. It wasn't a great experience all the time. Nonetheless, it's a pretty interesting story, and I think that most people can relate to the story in some way, shape, or form, whether or not they have lived anything like my life. You don't have to have been in a band or been around this or known this, because there's a lot of just stuff in here that I think most people can relate to something in it.
Absolutely. So once again, Harley, it's an absolute honor to talk to you. It's absolutely amazing, mate. And best of luck with the film. I know it's already smashed America. And
if you got the ability to put the links for the shows, it's going to be
we'll do that
in London at the Finsbury Park Picture House, November 6th, Manchester at the Plex on the 7th, Birmingham at the Mockingbird on the 9th, Duke's in Brighton on November 10th, and back in London at Ritzy Brixton Picture House on the 11th. And you can get tickets at wiredforchaos.com or contact any of those theaters. I'll be there for a Q&A.
Absolutely. Pow. Right. Good to speak to you, Harley. Take care, man.
Take it easy.